Hey guys, how's it going? OSCO here, back with another video. Today I'm going to be going over a halftime track that I'm working on, and all the basses in blue are going to be the ones that we're going over. And there's a lead in here as well, which derives from the bass. And before I go any further, I'm just going to play the track and then break down the basses.
Cause I'm a nasty motherfucker. Nasty motherfucker.
So yeah, the main sounds in this track are mostly Reese basses that are quite percussive. So I'm going to go into each one, like the effects chains and why I've processed them the way I have. So this first bass. I'm just going to close all this down and focus on operator down here. So let's start off with the routing. So within operator, there's different ways that you can route these operators. So it starts off with each operator feeding into one another. I decided to choose this one, the second from the end, that kind of looks like a L on its side. What this basically means is that the yellow, green and blue operator are being fed straight out, and operator D is FMing C. So the first two operators are set to a saw wave, and one's slightly detuned from the other, so the fine's increased by 10. And then operator C is a sine wave that's being modulated by operator D, which is a triangle wave, and that's on a course of 4. The reason I've done this is to get a classic Reese sound like this. If I turn off all the processing. Sounds like that. If I take off the filter. So the detuning is the reason why that's like moving. If I put that down flat, just sounds like a saw wave. Move up. Because it's moving in and out of phase with each other. So then if I turn on the filter now, what I've done is I've boosted the resonance at about 400 Hz, and then I've put a PDR filter drive on there, and then driven it by 15 decibels. Now, if I turn off these oscillators and turn on these two, it's just a basic, sounds like sine compression, but it's just a modulated, it's a triangle wave modulating a sine wave, and together it's just quite a dark sounding patch. Now what I've done is I've boosted the volume so it's already clipping coming out of operator, because for these sorts of sounds where it is really heavy and aggressive, it's all about how you manage the distortion, and I'll go into how I do that. So I've just put a low cut on here just to stop any of the muddy frequencies from coming out below here. Clean it up before it goes into the chain. Now here's the chain. I've got one clean chain for the sub, which is there, and then this is my mono chain, so all the amps, chorus is turned off, I can delete that, but everything here is mono, except for the reverb actually. Bring that down. Now that's in mono. So let's go into everything. Turn it all off and we'll go stage by stage. So first amp I've put on there is a rock amp, and pulled the gain up all the way, bass is pulled down, middle and treble are pulled all the way up. It's super aggressive, dry wet, full, volume full. Before. Really just brings out all the high end and like adds a bunch of saturation in there. Now, here I've added an auto filter. This has got an LFO on it. It's a bandpass, sorry, a notch, and it's just in the frequency range where like all the extra harmonics have been created by the amp. The reason why it sounds jumpy is because it's phasing and then it's moving across the points where it's skipping because of the amp, and then it's sweeping through the frequency spectrum. I've added a saturator on top of that, so whatever harmonics that were taken away are added back. For that, it's literally just a basic saturator, and I've just driven it a load. Then I've put another filter in back in the same spot. Seems counterintuitive to, like, you know, put different filters on, but if you move the position and then change the rate of the LFO, you have the filters moving behind the saturator, and then you have the filters moving in front of the saturator, and you get this like backwards and forwards push-pull effect. Got another one higher up, just for more movement. Then I'm cleaning up the signal, because I don't want all that low end in here, because I've got a low end patch here. Glue compressor. This is just, so I've set the EQ on it, so it's not affecting any of the low end, but there's not much in there anyways. But that's set to 200 Hz. So everything between 100 and 200 is unaffected by this compressor. And then all the high end is basically just being caught and then being pulled down and squished, so the dynamics are reduced. And then I'm just whacking it up a load again, just into the soft clipper, so that it's distorting even more. Then I've put another filter on after that, because it's another stage of distortion. And then I'm running that through a convolution reverb with a short decay. And width is all the way down, and I've put the EQ down all the way up to 1K, because I don't want any sounds below that being reverbed. Because I've got vocal samples down here which are being reverbed at below 1K, and just to manage all the reverbs and stuff, I just like to set reverbs in their own frequency spectrum so that things don't get muddied up. It's easy to get lost with reverbs in a mix. If I go back here. And then just an EQ to clean up the high end. The reason I chose a convolution reverb over a regular reverb is that convolution reverbs will tend to emulate the sound of a real space much better than what the stock reverb in Ableton does. So I know most of you guys might not have that, but if you don't, consider getting it, because it's game changing, honestly. And then it's just some shaping EQ on the end of this to make it fit in with the mix, but I'll go in onto that later, because I'll tell you what I've done with the stereo bands compared to the mono bands. So amps have got output options. You can either mono it or make it dual, so it goes out both the left and the right channel. So for the amps in here, I set it to dual, exact same settings as on everything else. I changed the filters around just so that the side bands are moving separately from the mid bands, just to create a bit of interest and make it sound wider, because you hear differences going on in the side bands that are different from what you're hearing in the middle band. And I've also put a chorus on here, so same effect that was in the last video that I did. I've increased the modulation here and by times 20. No feedback, 100% dry wet, and that just really widens up the sound. I've got a low rate, but that low rate is times 20. So if I turn that off, you could probably fiddle around with it somewhere around here, but I just like to keep it. on the times 20 and then change the amount. Don't want the amount too high. Otherwise it starts sounding like a monster. Even though it kind of does, but hey. So everything else is the same. And then what I've done here on this EQ is to mix it in with the drums. So I've allowed space for the thump of the kick down here, and I've allowed space for like the high end of the snare and the lead as well. The lead sits in this area, so I know that takes out a lot from the sound, but in context of the track, it sits a lot nicer. And then whatever high end I've lost by cleaning up down here, I've just boosted back up. If I turn that off. So and then added a saturator on the end just to stop it from distorting with the soft clipper. So that's the first bass. And then second bass is identical to the one I just showed you, this one here. But instead of using saw waves, I've used square threes, which is 3 harmonics of a total square wave, and turned that into a Reese. And then rather than using the rock preset, I changed it to lead. And everything else is pretty much the same. This EQs on the end are different because there's different frequencies that are popping out, and I wanted to clean up certain frequencies where the bass goes from being where the lead goes from being low to high. So it just required moving some frequencies out of the way, because Reese basses in this sort of music, when you're distorting and adding so many harmonics, it's so full frequency that you need to manage and figure out where things, where other parts of your track, like your drums and your snares and other elements, where they're all sitting, and then allow space for them with EQs. And it's just about playing around with it, and the more you do it, the more you practice it, the better you get at balancing them. Now for the lead, like I said before, identical to the saw patch up here, but I've taken out the bass and the sides, I think. Yeah, so the bass and the sides are gone, but I've made a combination of like the two in the same rack, so the amps are mono, but then the chorus is also in there, but only at 50%, because I want it to be quite narrow, because the bass is obviously taking up all the side frequencies. And when I collapse it down to mono, I don't want the lead to be too wide and then phasing and causing issues with the bass. So I've added a little bit of width, but not as much as the bass. And that's identical to the other one, but the operator C that's being modulated by the triangle wave is now a square wave. And I've high passed it, and it's exactly the same processing, but the convolution reverb is it's actually a bigger plate than I've used in the other one, with less decay but more width. And then that's just moving out of these EQs at the end are just pulling up all the lows that are created by all the distortion. And in the high end here, I've just removed a bit of the lead sound for more high end in the basses, because if you cut out everything for the lead, then there's going to be no high end for the basses. And yeah, then this one here is just the intro sound, so I've added a bandpass filter in there, so it sounds thinner. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't want to break down too much of what's going on in this track, because this is going to be a track that I'm actually releasing under like with a new EP that I'm working on, so I would say if you want to know more about the track, I'll go into it, but I'm keeping this a bit secret because there's other basses in here which are mine, and I don't mind showing you like Reese basses because there's tutorials out there for that. I'm just showing you how I process mine, but there are some sounds in here which like I've got my secrets for. So yeah, if you want to stay tuned for more content like this, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, helps me out a lot. Leave a comment for any future video suggestions, and yeah, see you guys on the flip side. Peace.